Thank you for being here for another Wednesday concert here at Valley College. Continuing in our series, you can see there's two more concerts before the spring break, but then there's a whole another 8 or so concerts after that. I just didn't have room on the flyer. So please make sure you check in with our concert calendar and see what's coming up. We have some great concerts still coming up. We have a string quartet next week in honor of Women's History Month. It's an all-female string quartet playing music by female composers. So I think we'll find it very interesting. They're an incredibly accomplished string quartet here in Los Angeles. Again, on the calendar will be links. Once I upload the video after the concert, you can access the video or share it with a friend if they missed the concert, or if you want to hear it again. You can find those links on the concert calendar, as well as a link to this a PDF of this program if you misplaced yours or need another copy. All right, so today I'm very excited to have one of our faculty members here. Michael Matsuno playing a flute player, or a flutist or a flautist, right? It's either is acceptable. And Todd Moellenberg piano. They are a duo, as you see, titled their Whist Duo. Also, side note, on the calendar is a link to their website. So if you want to read a little bit more about them, performances that they have coming up, you can find that link on the website, or you could email me. I'd be happy to share it with you. So today we're going to hear some in the realm of what we typically call program music. So in music appreciation this week, we've been listening to various famous examples of program music. The Symphonie Fantastique by Hector Berlioz, a very, very famous orchestral work. Definitely worth a listen, and definitely worth a live performance if there's one playing near us. And next time it comes to the LA Phil, make sure you go. We also listened to Pictures at an Exhibition, Mussorgsky, and some different adaptations of that. Adaptation for orchestra, orchestrated by Maurice Ravel, a synthesizer version, a thrash metal version of it. Pretty fun stuff we've been listening to. So in that realm, we're listening to this duo of piano and flute playing program music, and I know Michael will tell us a little bit about it as we go through. There's some information on the back about the pieces, and then they'll be available for some questions afterwards. All right? That's enough for me. One last thing, I would just request, if you need to leave the hall during the concert, please try and do so at an appropriate moment. Wait for a pause in the music to walk out, and then quietly try and return when you're ready to come back in. We really appreciate it. All right, so I'd like to invite Michael and Todd to the stage, please.
Also, I want to thank James, who I'm sure had some hand in making this a success today, because he's doing everything for us. So thank you. Again, thank you for being here. My name is Michael Matsuno, and this is my husband, Todd Moellenberg. We've been playing together since 2015. We met a few years prior to that. Yeah, and we're playing a lot of music together right now. So that beautiful piece you just heard was by the composer, the Afro-Cuban composer Tania Léon. And let me see, if you didn't read the program note, does anyone have an idea of what that music was about, or a thought? Or even if you did, like what did that music make you think about?
Sound like a bird.
Like a bird? Any other thoughts or ideas? Well, if you read the program note, you'll see Alma means like spirit or soul. And it's based on a poem by the poet Carmen Chimenti. And the work is kind of about the sound of wind and the sort of spirit that exists in the natural world. And you kind of hear with the flute part the chimes, wind chimes. And it's a lot of fun to play because I get to be very free with that. Now, I think one of the really beautiful aspects of that piece is how that wind and that spirit, the human spirit, suddenly takes a really human form with this dance that sort of erupts in the middle and then becomes sort of nature again. So the kind of music we're playing is, programmatic in a really interesting way in that it doesn't necessarily tell a story, but it depicts an idea or a concept or something in nature. And so in this way, I think of it a lot like poetry. And actually, like I said, that beautiful piece by Tania Léon was based on poetry. So the next piece we're going to play for you is the Digital Bird Suite by a Japanese composer, Takashi Yoshimatsu. Very famous in Japan, and this piece, written in 1984, gets played a lot in the States, but I don't think he's as well known here. And I kind of want to prompt you to use your imagination as to what these movements are really about, or what you hear, or what images they evoke for you. It reminds me a lot of a poem by the American poet Wallace Stevens, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. I think each of these pieces is about birds, but from a completely different sort of poetic view, zooming in very close or zooming very wide. The first, I don't want to spoil your imagination, but I will give you some of the ideas that come up for me. The first movement, bird phobia, kind of makes me, I don't know if birds ever make you nervous, but if they do, to me this kind of evokes that feeling. And then the second movement, a bird in the twilight, I picture a teeny tiny little bird and a beautiful sort of countryside with a watermill and all of these beautiful sounds around the bird. Twitter machine is maybe a bit more like a Geppetto's workshop, someone like tinkering with a mechanical bird and it sort of keeps falling apart. And then a bird in the noon, to me, is the most close-up perspective you get of an actual bird and its behavior in its sort of very agitated, alert state. And then finally, the last movement, bird circuit, is to me kind of like the mind of a bird. So you get all of these very different perspectives and views of birds. Of course, I really, really welcome you to think of completely different other translations of this. And I just want to say one other thing about the title, the Digital Bird Suite. As maybe some of you learned in your history class, a suite is a form from the 18th century that was a collection of dances. And I don't necessarily hear this as dances, but there's actually a very clear symphonic form underlying the piece. So you have your first movement, your allegro first movement, a slow, calm second movement, a cadenza for the flute, and then a scherzo, like a joke, a sort of sprightly fourth movement, and then this big climactic finale. So that's the Digital Bird Suite. I hope you enjoy the poetry and the beauty of this piece. And finally, I also want to thank Todd Moellenberg for the incredible work he's done collaborating with me. And I would love to answer questions about the music or our process together at the end. So if you think of something you want to ask me or him, feel free.
you so much. Would you like a chair to sit? Can I get you a chair?
Sure.
Yeah, can you do that? While I'm getting a chair, questions for them to start with.
Yes.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I forgot which one. It was like it was the second piece. It made me feel like I was in a fairy tale world of some sort. Like I was, like slow dancing, but just like waltzing around.
That's really beautiful. That's what that piece makes me feel like too.
Questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you.
What type of bird do you guys think about when you're doing?
You know what? It's the Twitter bird, because there's a title that's like the Twitter machine. So I'm just thinking about that like pastel blue bird in my head while I'm playing. And the whole piece seems to have that color, but I think it's just one of those happenstance correlations. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of a crow sometimes too. And we have a cat, so I think about like seeing birds through my cat's eyes. Yeah. Good question. I see a question, a hand
Yes.
there in the back.
Yes, in the back.
I'm hearing like a conversation almost between like the piano and the flute. Is that intentional?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Could I ask that you repeat the question?
Sure. The person in the back asked about the conversation between the two parts and if it was intentional. And I think it definitely is. There are spots in that last piece, in the 5 movements, where we're like totally over, like going back and forth, like rapid fire, and it's very challenging.
And then there are moments where we're right together,
Yeah.
saying the same thing at the same time. And so you hear in both pieces actually, you hear that sort of conversation, dialogue, and then unison, togetherness. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that took quite a bit of time to sort out, and I mean, you both are so accomplished. Probably took no time at all, but
We were rehearsing in here. We weren't quite
Yeah.
landing one of those unison, so
Okay.
we actually were able to use some of the time as we warmed up before you guys got here, just to check in with some of that stuff,
Yeah.
because it always needs a little bit of that fine tuning.
I bet.
Yeah.
There's so many questions. I love this. Yes, gentleman here.
Yeah, since much of it is arrhythmic and there's no conductor, is one of you leading or are you playing off of each other?
I mean, this guy just goes. So I get to like be part, like in his like wash of sound, I would say, but typically the flute leads. In a lot of repertoire that's like flute and piano, the flutist is the soloist and the piano is an accompanist. But this music is like very balanced. We both have a lot of notes and big parts to play. So I think we're both kind of equally leading and following depending on what the music demands. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have it all marked, like the very last thing that happens is my cue, but often Michael is starting the pieces and indicating when he wants me to come in. For instance, in the slow movement of the Yoshimatsu. So a lot of that, it's all strategized and we're just constantly subdividing and counting in addition to making sure we are together.
Also, just as a part of that question, are you actually reading note for note, or do you have harmonic patterns that you're improvising over?
We are reading note for note. The only things that are sometimes flexible for us are certain events. We have the notation for what the composer wants, and we have a little bit of liberty to introduce it as we see fit. But everything is written out in these pieces.
Yeah, that's a great question. I had a similar thought, especially in the cadenza. Like, how much flexibility do you have, or is there a absolutely written out, or is it kind of a blueprint, and then you can change as you will? I mean, I would assume there's much more obviously in that, since Todd is not accompanying you or playing with you in that part.
Yeah, the movement that was just flute alone is very precisely notated, and it's really hard, you could tell, but there's a lot of room for like rubato if I want to slow down or speed up, and also like I can make the very complex ideas my own, and that's kind of the challenge, is like taking this very very specific and difficult music and giving it an idea. And so that's kind of what we tried to do.
Yes.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and you did it beautifully, I must say, right? There was definitely, even though, at least for me, there was definitely stories going on. It wasn't just a technical exercise. As technical and difficult as your playing is for both of you,
Yeah.
it really had a wonderful sense of story to me anyway. Yes?
First of all, oh my gosh, you both are so wonderful and your collaboration so tight knit. I was like, wow, those like 30 seconds or whatever they are exactly together.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. I had a question about timbre actually, which might be a little weird, but I noticed in one of the movements when you were both playing together, it sounded like almost as one timbre. And then in other movements, it was very clear when, for example, the piano was a bit more percussive and the flute was a bit more legato and flowy. How much do you think about this idea of timbre either joining or disjoining, if that makes sense?
That's
Yeah,
a great
there's a
question.
lot of that running through these pieces, right?
Some of it is really happening live, you know, responding to each other's sound and maybe deciding whether to push it further in a certain direction or disband from each other. So I was thinking about what you're asking, not just in terms of rhythm, you know, our togetherness and our dialogue, but actually also the timbre as well.
And can I ask I think sort of a related question to me in a way, I love this question about timbre, is that when you're rehearsing, do you discuss things like extra musical ideas, like rather than, oh, what tempo are we going here, or what's the metronome marking, or were we crescendo, decrescendo, or so on? Do you talk in, I want a blue feeling here,
Yeah.
or I want a more red, or it needs to be, I don't know, do you use language like that? Do you talk about an emotional, I want anxiety to play out here or something? How might that play into your rehearsing and your performance?
You know, that's a great question, and maybe not enough. I think in the beginning, I mean, these pieces are so hard. I mean, like we've like probably rehearsed 40 hours or so, and I think in most of that, it's just like nuts and bolts. But like, I think what happens is you earn then the privilege of getting to step back after you've created something and like think about it. And like we were sitting backstage and we were talking about Tania's piece and like the way that like the spirit of wind becomes the spirit of humans dancing and like I feel like we can think about that now because we're not worried about like will we play all the right notes. And so, but yeah, for the flute, I like the voice. I know there's a lot of vocal students here. I mean, we have to play with timbre and color constantly because if we play with one color, it just sounds bad. You know, if you sing with one tone, it's like, why even bother? You know, like the whole point of the instrument is how colorful it could be. So I constantly think about it. And yeah, we don't discuss it that much, but I think probably in this next phase we will, you know, make
So after the piece maybe settles for you
Mhm.
a little bit and you get some perspective on it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, maybe one or two more questions. Yes.
Hi, that was absolutely magical. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We were wondering what age you were when you fell in love with music and started to learn.
Oh, I love that question. I'll go first. Okay, I was 6 years old when I took my dad's entire tape collection and claimed it to be my own. And so I was listening to the flute when I was like as young as I can remember. And then I demanded they buy me a flute when I was 8 years old. So that's been my life ever since then. And I'm 35, so I guess it's been 27 years of music for me.
Awesome.
I don't remember not playing, but I was probably around 5, and I think I was a really introverted, sort of dreamy child, and I think my mother says I really asked for lessons, and I think as an adult now, when I reflect on it, I think the piano is something that you can spend a lot of time at in private, and I think that really was my way into loving music and exploring my own creativity, you know, in my own room. So
How old were you?
I was 5, so
And how old are you now?
this has been over 3 decades now. but now I love playing with others, you know, I think as pianists, and I'm sure there are lots of pianists in this room, it can become very insular, and you really do have to make a point to reach out to fellow musicians.
Like lonely.
Yeah. So at this phase in my life, it's just such a treat to be able to join others and play with them.
Awesome. One more, yeah.
Just a comment that I feel like you guys were feeling your music so much, you guys were practically dancing with the instruments itself and with sound. It was beautiful.
Thank you very
That's a
much.
great compliment. Thank you.
What a nice way to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.